They should go to the place, they should go to the place where the most significant conversations are actually taking place. Today, that's on social media. I mean, let's take a look at some of the statistics from Pew Research. In short, everyone uses Facebook. 58% of the entire adult population uses Facebook. 71% of all online adults use Facebook. 66% of all online men use Facebook. 77% of all online women use Facebook. What about age groups? How does each generation use Facebook? Here's the breakdown. 87% of all online 18 to 29-year-olds use Facebook. 73% of all online 30 to 49-year-olds use Facebook. 63% of all online 50 to 64-year-olds use Facebook. And for the first time ever, more than half of online adults over the age of 65 are using Facebook. It's fair to say your church needs to have a presence on Facebook. The vast majority of online adults are there, and so should the church. Of course, Facebook isn't the only online social network that people are using. Twitter and Instagram are also significant social media platforms, but this webinar will focus on Facebook. So again, I'm glad you're here. This webinar is designed to help church leaders build an effective Facebook page. And like our previous webinar, looking at building an effective website, this session will look at the basics, that is an overview of the basic rules of the road, and the essentials. We'll look at a checklist of essential content. We're going to take a brief break for conversation between these two major elements in the event that you might have some comments or questions. But now let's get started. Because people are there, here are a few basic things that church leaders should consider at the very start. Every church should have an active Facebook presence. Every church should have an active Facebook presence. It matters not the size of your congregation, the age of your membership, the scope of your ministry, the location of your building. Those factors do not matter. Every church should have an active Facebook presence. The truth is, social media is no longer a fad. It is well established in our culture, and churches should do everything they can to engage the public in this forum. I'll say it again. Every church should have an active Facebook presence, and that presence should be public. That is, anyone on or off Facebook should be able to see your posts, and it should not be private, where only members can see the post. Your Facebook site should be visible to everyone. Number two, remember your audience. Many of those who view your page will be members of your own congregation, and they're looking to stay in the know. They may be looking for news of upcoming events. They may be looking at pictures of previous events. They want to be connected with their church family, and they are, in fact, actually your primary audience. Your members are your primary audience. But you will also have guests, potential visitors, viewing your page. They could be looking for information about your church, its services, its activities, its life and character. Obviously, your content must appeal to both, but your primary audience is most likely your own membership. So keep that in mind as you add items to your timeline. I'll talk more about this a little later. Number three, post appropriate content. Unlike your church bulletin, not everything going on at the church needs to be on your Facebook page. I've seen everything from divorce notices to surgery updates posted on church Facebook pages. In most instances, that information doesn't belong on a church's public Facebook page. You can use private emails for those kinds of updates. Facebook page content should be of importance to both guests and members. Whether by text or graphics, choose wisely. In your posts, present a message that represents the best of the church. So be affirming, be broad-minded, and avoid those combative or controversial subjects. Next, use Facebook to announce major church-wide events. I've seen some churches add announcements for every single event of every single day of the week. That's not good. Be selective. An effective Facebook page will choose significant events to highlight so that the best of the church is not lost among the mundane. Number four, or is it five? Beware of copyright infringements. You've heard it said, it's easier to beg forgiveness than seek permission. But beware. There is a common misperception that images online are in the public domain and can be reused. On the contrary, you cannot just find an image through Google search and take it to use on your website or Facebook page. This can result in large fines. Unless you are absolutely, positively, 100% sure, you should presume that all online content is copyright, and you do not have permission to use it yourself without consent from the copyright holder. So verify that the material isn't copyrighted when posting things that are not your own. I'm speaking here of professional photos, clip art, videos, articles, and the like. It's much better to share a link to a video instead of embedding it on your church's Facebook page. And it's better to share a link to an article instead of copying it and pasting it into your Facebook blog. I think it's a matter of honesty, integrity, and our Christian witness. There are, in fact, a number of websites that offer free or low-cost photos, including Pixabay, Pexels, and Unsplash. These are great places to secure royalty-free images that are not encumbered with a copyright. On the ABCOPAD Facebook page, for example, pictures and images are posted from 4 sources. They may be our own camera shots. They may be our own created graphics. They may be ABC USA images, or they may be from one of those royalty-free websites. That's how we post on Facebook. Moving on. Use correct size graphics. 2 graphics appear at the top of every Facebook page: the cover photo and the profile picture. I'm going to talk more about these graphics later, but here I want to talk to you about sizing these to the correct proportions. Avatars or profile pictures should be square. Here's the ABCOPAD profile picture. Cover photos or header images are rectangular and should be sized correctly. There are, in fact, specific sizes as seen here. You can get this information if you choose to Google this on the internet. Here again is the current ABCOPAD cover photo. Put the profile and cover images together and you have a great banner. Again, choose, size, and position your pictures carefully. When done correctly, it can make a great first impression. When done poorly, well, let's just say it's a mess. Move on. Get permission to post pictures of children. Who doesn't like kids? I mean, they're great, and people love to see those photos, but be very careful. Our region has long emphasized the importance of protecting our children and providing a safe space for its ministries with children. So let me make a plug here for Protect My Ministry under the capable leadership of Pastor Valerie Black. Many of our ABCOPAD churches have implemented essential strategies for safeguarding our children and youth. I hope you will see that such policies should extend to church websites and Facebook pages. How do we best represent, yet also protect children and youth on social media sites? I want you to understand as well that many parents have an aversion to posting any pictures of their children on Facebook. It's an issue that demands our attention, and there are ways to constructively address these concerns, and we could talk about how that might be done. For example, having a media release form, but that is actually another conversation. For now, let me say, never, 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 ever tag or post the names of children on your Facebook page. Never. Another item here. Post frequently. Is how often you post on social media really that important? You bet it is. If you post too infrequently, your audience will forget that you exist, and you will quickly fade into the deep, dark recesses of their minds. Even worse, if you don't post frequently enough, you won't look as reliable or authentic. After all, how much faith do you put into a church that hasn't updated its Facebook page for several months? Friends, I'm sorry to report, we have such churches in ABCOPAD. On the other hand, if you are posting too often, you will become a complete nuisance, and people will dread seeing your posts overcrowding their feed. Post too often, and people might get sick of having their feeds flooded with your content. So here's what the research says to help you get it right. First, most studies agree that for churches, one post per day is optimal, with a maximum of 2 posts per day. HubSpot found that pages or Facebook pages under 10,000 fans, and that would be most ABCOPAD churches, experience a 50% drop in engagement per post if they post more than once a day. There's another point here to consider, and that is, at a minimum, you should post to your Facebook page 3 times per week. Once per day, just about right. Top it out 2 times a day, a minimum of 3 times per week. And finally, avoid sharing a bunch of posts in quick succession. Allow at least 3 hours between posts in any single day. Too many updates, too many posts is the number one reason people unfollow Facebook pages. And post at the optimum time. Determining the ideal time for your posts is an important element of your Facebook ministry. Take a look at this record of engagement. The most common wisdom is to post for the most. And most people are engaged with Facebook between the 8 hours of 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. Now, there are exceptions to this, but as a rule, you will engage more people when you post during these hours, Monday through Friday. And here's where a social media calendar might be particularly helpful. A simple calendar such as this, here's the one that I use when I'm managing the ABCOPAD Facebook presence, a simple calendar to help establish a schedule for when you share particular posts according to the season or general popularity. You probably will have to adjust this calendar through the month, especially in the earliest stages of setting up your page. It takes some discipline, but it helps me to understand and to be deliberate as to when and how often I will post on the ABCOPAD Facebook site. Now, here's some good news. You can actually schedule posts in advance. And I do this all the time. I'll spend some time at my computer and build a number of Facebook posts that I want released in the weeks ahead. I can do that in advance using Facebook scheduling tools. So, for example, instead of an immediate post, you can choose to create a post in the business suite. Clicking on that, once the text and pictures have been inserted, I construct my text and select my graphic. I can choose down in the lower right corner to schedule this post for a future date by clicking on the arrow to publish and then select schedule the post. I select my date and time, and my post is queued to be published on schedule. You can see my scheduled posts listed here, what I had previously prepared, and they are scheduled to be released according to my predetermined schedule. Now, unfortunately, as you probably know, this particular event that I had created to celebrate Frank's retirement, plans have changed. And I have had to remove that post and create something new. That information you can adjust as needed. But the last point here before we take a break, you want to monitor the page and stay current. You may not have major events or news to share each and every day, but someone, or maybe a team of someone's, should be checking the Facebook page often, perhaps once a day. You want to read every comment on your timeline and perhaps through the messaging board. And while it might not be necessary to respond to every single comment you receive, you should definitely monitor the conversations and respond as needed. The only thing more frustrating than not being able to find an answer is asking a question only to have it ignored. So when people ask you questions on Facebook, through the message app or in the comment sections, you want to answer them quickly and courteously. So I'm taking a break at this point to rest my voice, and perhaps you have a comment or a question on those basics that I've shared with you thus far.
Thank you, Pastor Bud. I'm not sure what's going on with your camera. It's kind of a green. I don't know if you turned off your camera, but I can't see your face. But grateful for that initial presentation. There you are. Thank you. And we'll take some questions now. If you have questions for Pastor Bud, you can put them in the chat box, or you can just unmute yourself and ask your question. And someone has her hand up. I'm not sure who.
Carol Hawkins.
Oh, Carol, thank you.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I just wondered, is this the Facebook page that you are sharing with us that you do for ABCOPAD? This is a business Facebook page, right?
Carol,
Mark,
yeah, Carol, it's just it was not set up as a business. When you go to start your Facebook page, you have a couple of options. It can be a group page or a public Facebook page. And what Bud was suggesting was a public Facebook page. And then there's all types of categories that you can select. So we selected a religious nonprofit. as our category. And so I would suggest for most of our churches that they would be religious nonprofits. And it is a public page then that you can add other category definitions regarding the type of page you're building. But all of those things are you're able to select.
Okay, because I mean, sometimes I get a notification, you know, boost this post, and you know, I think it costs money to boost the post.
It does, Carol. And so unlike a personal Facebook page, and you need a personal Facebook page to build a corporate
Right.
Facebook page. So
Right.
unlike a personal Facebook page, the page you would build then gives you those options to spend money to boost the appearance of the page. And we don't ever do that. We don't
Yeah.
spend any money.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and I have one more question. I don't want to take up the time, but the main problem with our Facebook page is that it's a mess. It's disorganized and it's a mess. When you go on to look at it, I don't, you know, I don't even know what people see. I see what I see as an admin, but it's a mess. And I think it's about organization. So maybe he'll be speaking about that in the next section.
Pastor Bud, do you
I'll
want
be
to speak to
talking
that?
about. Yeah, I'll be talking about some of the content that you can
Okay.
put up there. There are certain components to every Facebook page, and we'll look at each of those components. Of course, the largest component is what would be referred to as the timeline, and we'll talk about all different kinds of ways you can build on that timeline.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
I think, Sharon, did you have a question? Is it a good idea to post video of church services on Facebook or go to YouTube? Bud, do you want to speak to that a little bit?
I think you can choose to do both. I'll be talking about very briefly posting worship services on Facebook. If you post on Facebook, you are limiting your audience to those who have Facebook accounts. So you might choose to post in both places, on your Facebook site, on your church website, or on YouTube. I think as you multiply the venues to people, you increase your audience.
Thank you. I would agree. And I think of Facebook as being a place for short video clips, usually, as opposed to long clips. I think it's okay for churches to put their entire service on Facebook. That's fine. But I think a better receptacle is YouTube. And then it's even easier to share the embedded YouTube link with people throughout your congregation who may have easier access. So I think short videos are great on Facebook. Longer videos, it's good for churches to develop a YouTube channel. And maybe that's our next webinar, Pastor Bud, is creating a YouTube channel. So, yep. Is it D? I see a hand up. If you want
hello.
Oh, Brenda. Thank you, Brenda.
Hi. I was wondering, I'm not an administrator of my church's Facebook page, but I'm totally frustrated because they decided to make it private. And I think the concern was, do you recommend that the administrator monitor what let's say, approve all posts from the members before it is posted, and make the decision to not to post if it is something that doesn't exactly fit with the theology of the church, or just may not be appropriate for the page. I think my church opted to just make the page private, which I think defeats the purpose of the Facebook page.
It does. When you make it public, obviously you need to be more attentive and monitor what is being discussed on your Facebook page. I don't think that I'm breaking any confidence here to say that we have had on the ABCOPAD Facebook site occasions when a comment has been made that has been somewhat disruptive or controversial, and the staff discusses whether or not we're going to respond to that or just ignore it. I think that Facebook is a wonderful place to have an open, transparent conversation about things that are important to people. And in each case, I believe I'm correct in saying that the ABCOPAD staff did not delete those comments. They allowed other people to see a concern or a
Yeah, let the
question
dog in.
or a criticism and appropriately respond to that, rather than to become involved in censorship, to allow the conversation to be constructive and positive. I suppose if it became obnoxious and obscene, you would perhaps choose to block that person. But by and large, we've tried to maintain an open dialogue with people looking at our Facebook page. It does put you at some risk, but I think it demonstrates that the church is willing to discuss hard issues and to discover where we have common ground when we might have other disagreements.
Well said, Pastor Bud. We try
Thank
really
you.
hard. Yep, you got it, Brenda. We try really hard to leave it open. And one of the things that we've done, Brenda, as well, is we do have either people who are admins or editors, and those folks always show up in the timeline. So we have lots of contributors who we know are going to end up, and we trust those folks, and they're going to end up in the timeline. We do, and Bud is really good at this, keep track of comments, but we just have a lot of good editors. So there's always content being added that we know is trustworthy and good content. When people add comments or have a post that isn't by an admin, those things we check on pretty close. Yeah, and I think Pastor Bud, Ken was asking, can we make a PDF of your presentation later and make that available along with the video?
Yes.
So, cool.
Can I throw out a question?
Sure,
Yeah.
Kurt.
I have several different Facebook pages for groups that I'm involved in. I administer 2 or 3 different ones. One of them has over 400 people in it all the time. Every once in a while, someone will begin to post over and over and just keep going, rattling on and rattling on. And my approach to that is I send a private message to them explaining that it's disruptive when you do that much stuff. Can you, if you've got a question or you want to tell somebody a whole lot of details, use Messenger. And that's worked for me on that, but that's not a church Facebook. Would the policy be similar to using on a church Facebook page?
I think you could. One of the things that we do on the ABCOPAD Praise Facebook site is to periodically post the rules of the road, trying to help people to understand, particularly in that particular Facebook site, to maintain some confidentiality, not to disclose sensitive information on a Facebook site that is open to the public. So I think whatever Facebook page you're looking at, you might remind people what some of the rules of the road are, helps keep people in check.
I have a question.
That's what he's talking about.
Go
a
ahead,
PDF
James.
person. I am recording it. Yes, I don't-
Do you need to get permission from adults to post pictures on Facebook?
I don't think we have. There's a lot of pictures that we put up of when our staff is out visiting churches. We have pictures of Sunday school classes, worship services, choirs. And I'm not sure if there is a staff policy when the camera starts clicking, whether or not we've asked everyone's permission. I guess if somebody were to approach a photographer and say, please don't put my picture on Facebook, we would certainly honor that. But it has not been, to my knowledge, a general restriction when we photographed adults.
Okay.
So
Okay,
James-
thank you.
Yeah, James, one of the things I try hard to do when they're group pictures, and I think this is true of even like newspapers, when they're group pictures, that doesn't require a photo release. When a newspaper takes a picture of a large group, you're not going to get releases from everyone in that group. When I'm taking pictures often at a church and I'm taking pictures of individuals, I will often say to them, hey, can I take your picture? You're going to be on Facebook. If they look at me and say, I'd rather you not take my picture, then I don't take their picture. And so as I run around a sanctuary or spend time taking more candid shots of individuals, I'm almost always asking them their permission before I snap that photo. And even, I've had some families tell me, you can take a picture of myself and this child, but I have a couple of kids in foster care. Their pictures cannot appear on Facebook. And they've told me those restrictions. And it was funny, I mentioned to a couple of our staff members, I was at the First Baptist Church of Milton. They were handing out Bibles to kids. I took a bunch of pictures of the kids receiving Bibles. And then I asked Pastor Andy if it was okay. And he said, we have releases for our Sunday school class. That'll be fine. But I didn't post any of those pictures until I checked in with the pastor to make sure it was okay before I put those pictures on our Facebook page.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I have a question, and perhaps it'll be discussed later on. On our Facebook page, when you go on it, it has all these related pages that pop up, and I don't want those related pages showing up on our church Facebook. Why do they show up, and is there any way that you can prevent them?
Mark, I'm not familiar with what she's speaking of.
Yeah, sorry, Linda. We have not had those issues, so I'm not familiar either. We'll have to, we can do a Zoom meeting together and we can look at that. I know there are ways to change your privacy settings to prevent some things from showing up on your Facebook page. So it may be some privacy things or some settings in the admin section that would prevent either advertisements or things from showing up in a scroll on the side. And we'd have to look at what those settings need to be. That might be something you can do a Google search on in terms of preventing those advertisements or connected businesses from showing up.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And Christy, again, I think often I rely upon the media releases of the churches that I'm visiting. On all of our mission trips, all of our mission trips, included in the permission page of our mission trip, is a media release. It's just a paragraph. And I know we had our legal counsel check on that, because if you're on a mission trip with me, you're ending up on Facebook and social media. And so that's just built into every permission. I know that when I was a local church pastor, that was included in my VBS registrations. That was included in just a paragraph saying you give permission. So when anyone signed the permission slip, they were giving me also permission to use their photo in publications and social media. Other questions? Hey, Bud, just to say too, that was such a good presentation. And Frank, Jeff, and I are like commenting in the midst of some text messages saying, we are so bad at doing any of that stuff. It's just horrible. The fact that we do not like do best practices in the midst of that. But so let me just say to all of you who may feel like, you know, Pastor Bud is giving you best practices, and like, just do it. Start by doing it. But, you know, his recommendations are really good ones. I hope you're taking them to heart. Going to change how I do Facebook posting. Questions, comments, thoughts?
Hey, Bud, will you be talking about how to read the metrics and the differences between administrators and editors?
I'm not going to address that, but Mark might want to make a comment if you have a specific question there.
Well, biggest thing, I'm trying to decipher. We post our entire worship experience on Facebook via live. And over the course of the week, we'll get the metrics. And according to the metrics, we got as many people watching us online as we have in person. And I know that's a skewed number.
Maybe it is, maybe it's not.
Correct. And we're going to
Trust
talk, we're going to talk a little bit more about that later. It is a little complex reading the metrics.
Okay.
And my best advice would be, there's a couple of really good YouTube videos that you can go on, and people better than me can explain some of that. So just do a search in YouTube under understanding Facebook metrics, and they'll help describe that. Regarding admins, administrators are have all power on Facebook to edit, to remove, to change, to do all kinds of things. Editors, on the other hand, can post things and edit their posts. It's not, they don't have the ability to change settings and to do a lot of different behind the scenes work. So better to have only a few admins and more editors, so that there aren't people changing the various settings and you finding out that an unknowledgeable admin made changes to your Facebook settings.
Well, that would explain why they cut me from an administrator back down to an editor.
That may explain that. So there you go. All right, Pastor Bud, shall we move forward?
Let's go on. Yeah. All right. All right, let's take a look now at the content of an effective church Facebook page. What is the essential content? We're going to look now at 6 elements. There is the cover photo, the profile image, and the about page, and the timeline content. Now, within the timeline content, there are quite a few items that we're going to be looking at. You can see them listed there. We'll talk more in detail about the timeline in a few moments. And we're also going to talk about pinning posts and language. Of course, while we're looking at this content, I hope that you will be evaluating your own church Facebook page. How does your Facebook page measure up? So beginning at the top, let's talk about the cover photo. Your cover photo is the large banner that appears across the top of your Facebook page. Here are several cover photos used by ABCOPAD on its Facebook page. So these are posted typically. The cover photo on the ABCOPAD site Facebook page will change about each month. I want you to remember that first impressions can make the difference between attracting attention to your Facebook site or averting attention. People will often make that decision based on your cover photo. So let's take a look at what I think are some exceptional examples. These pictures, I think, speak volumes. So as you watch these, I want you to think about your own cover photo. Does it reflect your church's unique personality? And is it meaningful? Does it represent what you consider to be most valuable? Is it crisp and clear and correctly centered? Is it positive and invitational? At a glance, what message does your cover photo communicate? I hope that you'll consider pictures that show emotion or images of people in action, whether in worship or in fellowship or in service. In fact, you might want to highlight church volunteers serving in the community. If your church grounds are particularly picturesque or you meet in an unusual or historic building, maybe you'll consider a scenic picture of the church itself. You want to turn your cover image into a work of art. And most important, you want to keep it fresh. You want to perhaps switch images often to maintain interest. These examples I'm showing you represent some great stuff. They tell a story without saying a single word. They tell us who and what this church is all about, and then some. They are powerful images that get people excited about a page. So, keeping this all in mind, I do this with some hesitation. Let's take a look at several cover photos from our ABCOPAD churches. And without identifying them by name, perhaps you can decide which ones hit the mark and which ones miss the mark. Here they are. Again, what's the impression that you get from those images? Do they tell a story? Do they invite, or do they welcome, or do they discourage your attention? So moving on now, beyond the cover photo, we want to talk about that profile image. The profile picture is a small image that appears at the top of your Facebook page. Unlike the cover photo, which can often change, the profile picture will usually remain static. Think of it as your logo or your trademark. In some ways, it's like the family crest, and it's not going to change. Most of you will immediately recognize the logo for ABCOPAD. Now, I might ask you at this point, do you have a logo for your church? If not, perhaps an artist from among your congregation can create one. In any case, I recommend using that logo for your profile picture and keep it simple. And use that same profile picture on all your social media accounts. Now, here are some examples from our ABCOPAD churches. Now, I might as well point out to you that not long ago, Facebook changed its format, and profile pictures that were once square are now round. So it's important to keep this in mind as you post your profile picture. Otherwise, as with this profile picture, you end up with a problem like this. Put this all together. Here's a nice example from Good Shepherd Baptist Church in Bear, Delaware. Their cover photo and their profile picture combined to make an attractive header for their Facebook page. And notice how their logo is reproduced on the cover. Nicely done, I think. We want to move on and now talk about the About page. The About section contains basic information about your church. This column is one of the first places people will look to try to get more information about your church. So don't neglect it. You'll want to include your address and pertinent information. There are actually two places to insert details here. You might add a description of your church and its times of services. You might even identify yourself as a part of ABCOPAD. Really, the choices are unlimited here in terms of what you can put in these two information sections. You can see several examples of here where people have provided a viewer with important information. By doing so, your church or your audience can get a sense of who you are and what you do. There's also a place here to identify your website, if you have one. I hope you do. Your phone number, the option for sending instant messages, and your hours of operation. You'll want to give as much information as possible in this About section. We're moving on to talk about the timeline content. This is the part of the Facebook page that will be constantly updated. It will require monitoring. It is really the meat and potatoes of the Facebook world. The timeline, which is sometimes called the wall, is really your story on Facebook. It features all the activities, photos, and messages in one place. Now, an effective Facebook page will have a strong mix of content. There will be photos and events, videos, memes, contests, polls, infographics, and even Q&A. A strong mix of content will keep your followers from getting bored and ignoring your posts in the news feed. Instead of the same old thing, instead of sharing the run-of-the-mill graphics, instead of limiting your posts to the monotonous cookie cutter pictures of butterflies and Bible verses, consider using some of these alternatives. How about sharing a testimony? Highlighting testimonies from your church members is a great way to share the gospel and give a personal touch to your posts. A photo of that person, or perhaps even a video sharing their story. How about asking a question? Invite others to join the conversation. You might experiment with a lighthearted question such as, what's your favorite dessert? It will invite people to engage in your Facebook page. Or you might actually experiment with a deeper prompt, such as, what does it mean to be a peacemaker? Ask a question now and then on your Facebook page. How about giving a tour? Record a video and give a tour of a part of your facility, maybe a classroom or the organ chamber or the food pantry, some place that many people have never seen. Give folks a chance to look at your facility and understand your ministry and your place in the community. Share your history. Do Flashback Friday or hashtag Throwback Thursday, featuring an old photograph from the church's archives, pictures of people, pictures of pastors, previous picnics. Share your history. Here's another idea. Spotlight a volunteer. Every church has amazing volunteers. Snap a quick photo of those special people and give them a shout out on social media. There's all kinds of folks there that are serving in your church. Why don't you highlight and celebrate their contributions? Recap an event. Grab photos from a recent service or event and feature them with captions in a featured album. Here's another idea. Create a contest. Challenge followers to post a photo of their home nativity. Choose a winner randomly and send them some church merchandise or maybe a $5 gift card to Wawa. You can create all kinds of contests to engage people in your Facebook page. How about promoting an upcoming event? There's always something on the calendar. Create a shareable graphic for your next service day, your next class meeting, youth event, or some special worship night. You'll want to promote the special events that are on your calendar. Invite people to church. Such a simple post. It's easy to get caught up in coming up with fun and creative posts. Don't forget to simply invite people to join your service. Everyone is welcome. Make sure you periodically invite people to come to your church. Share your worship service. Post your Sunday worship service, whether it is live or recorded, to allow people to participate in real time or later. Many of our ABCOPAD churches do this. Share a reading list. Share some recommended reading with your followers. It could be an additional resource that complements your sermon, or it might be a book recommended by your ministry leaders. Give people a preview of the book and invite them to read some good Christian literature. How about explaining a church term? Your church probably has some pretty unfamiliar words in its belief statements or faith doctrines. Choose one of those tricky words and explain its meaning. Now, let me just pause here to say that your posts should be brief. A post that is lengthy, a post that is 50, 75, 100 words long will probably lose the interest of its reader. You want to keep your posts brief, 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 and to the point. Here's another idea. Provide a link to a music video. Share a recorded music video from YouTube that features a hymn or chorus that you'll be singing on Sunday. Better yet, find a video that includes lyrics. I'll pause here again to mention the important aspects of copyright laws. Better to post a link to a music video than to embed the video in your own Facebook site. When you type in the URL to the music video, it will load into your site, but you will not be infringing on copyright rules and regulations. In all of this, be creative. So many of our church Facebook pages have become rather monotonous. They post one or two things constantly, and there is no variety, there is no change, there is nothing unexpected. Be creative and imaginative in your timeline content. The goal is to post content that engages people. I have a lot of church Facebook pages on my feed. I like to see what our ABCOPAD churches are up to. And I can tell you, there is one thing I notice a lot. I have the YouVersion Bible app on my phone, and I get the verse of the day at 5 a.m. Then throughout the rest of my day, I see multiple churches posting the same Bible verse with YouVersion's graphics. To be honest, I immediately skip over them because I've already seen it. In fact, it will probably show up 10 or 12 times more because one church after another is posting the same thing. Nothing original, nothing interesting, nothing that gives me pause, nothing that really engages me. By the way, the YouVersion Bible app has been downloaded nearly 500 million times. Simply reposting their graphics is dull and mundane. Again, be creative. Let's talk about pinning your posts. You may know that when you post new content on your Facebook page, older posts get pushed farther down the timeline. Sometimes, however, you might want a specific post to stay at the top of your page for longer, even after you publish new updates. To solve this, Facebook offers the ability to pin one post at a time at the top of your page. You can use pinning posts as a way to promote things like upcoming events or important announcements. To pin the post, you click on the three dots at the top right corner of a post on your page, and you click pin to top of page. It will then appear at the top of your page until you unpin it. Just keep in mind that you can only have one pinned post at any given time. Finally, consider your language. Make certain that anything related to your church is appropriate and a clear reflection of your church's mission and goal. And if you want to reach potential visitors, you need to avoid super churchy words. Keep the religious speak to a minimum. Don't ask newcomers to meet in the narthex, or you may find stragglers wandering around. You want to make sure that your language, your verbiage is understood by the common populace. So those are the important elements and content items that I wanted to speak about. I'm going to take a break here again and invite your comments or questions.
Thank you, Pastor Bud. If you have comments or questions, you can put them in the chat box or unmute yourself. You know, and as you're preparing your questions, one of the things I've said for a long time, Facebook or social media should really be a way to show action and movement in your ministry. You know, there are times when a website may have more static information, but I know for me, a significant way that I approach Facebook is I want people to know this ministry is active and engaged and moving. So to have all of our regional pastors, our regional associates posting on our Facebook page is a way to demonstrate there's action and motion in the midst of ministry. So I hope that that's helpful. What questions do you have for Pastor Bud? I see one, Dee has something in our chat box. Is it better to share a YouTube video or to copy the link and post it? Do you want to speak to that, Bud?
Is it better to what?
Is it better to share a YouTube video or to copy the link and post it?
Better to copy the link and post it.
Yep,
Yeah.
Correct. Actually, when you go to YouTube, you can usually find a tab that says share, and you can copy the link there. It'll say copy the link. And when you paste the link into Facebook, it automatically pulls up an image of that video and puts it in your post. So you don't have to worry about grabbing an image from the video or from the content. Facebook will automatically create that image as long as you're sharing that YouTube link. It's a very convenient way to share content from YouTube to Facebook. Other questions, thoughts?
Yeah, I have some insights. We've been, since COVID hit, we've been using my iPad. Mark, I finally went to an iPad. So there you go. Okay, so I'm now in the collective. But to live stream on our Facebook page, our worship, And you were going to possibly speak about the advantages and disadvantages of using Facebook Live over creating a YouTube channel.
Bud, you want to talk about that a little bit, or you want me to talk
I'm
about
sorry,
it?
I missed that. Would you, I apologize, Dave. Would you say that again?
Yeah, we're live streaming on our Facebook page, and based on some of the comments that you shared, YouTube may be a better avenue for
Right.
a longer post.
Right.
But just wondering, the advantages, disadvantages of a YouTube channel versus, the existing Facebook page, challenges with copyright, those types of things.
I'm going to have to beg off on that, Mark, because I am not involved in recording or posting worship services either on Facebook or YouTube. I've really had no experience with that. So, Mark, I'm going to
Sure. And
ask you to.
my thought is, Pastor Dave, I think it's certainly you certainly should be live streaming your worship service to Facebook. I think that's a good thing, and Facebook will automatically store that video. But over time, those posts will continue to drop further and further down on your Facebook feed, on your wall. So I do also recommend that you capture that video from Facebook and that you create a YouTube channel, say with your sermons, so that if someone wants to find an archived sermon or go back and listen to one of your messages, they can go to your YouTube channel and more rapidly find your video content. So broadcast it to Facebook, but have a YouTube channel as a receptacle for video content.
Okay. So use your YouTube channel as a better archive for all of the videos you produce.
Sure, as a library. And then if someone wants to watch one of your sermons, you can share with them your YouTube link and they'll be able to go back, or if you want to reference it. So, yep.
Yeah. One of the challenges we're facing is trying to get the church I currently attend to understand that online worship is with us and is here to stay, regardless of how how this virus thing shakes out. I think online services are a 21st century avenue.
Yeah. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in just a little bit. Actually, Dr. Jeff has a book that he's recommending, and we're going to talk just a little bit about that shortly. Sharon asked a question, how many hours per week are needed to keep up a Facebook administration? Bud, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I look at the ABCOPAD Facebook page several times a day. That's my job. So I don't mind doing that. I like to see what the staff is posting on their own, or what some of our regional associates are posting. So I monitor it several times a day. I'm not sure that a church Facebook page would require monitoring it several times a day, but I would encourage you to monitor. I'm just talking about monitoring the page. I would hope that you would be in the habit, someone would be in the habit of monitoring it at least once a day. In terms of actual building content, on average, I'm going to say I put about 2 hours, perhaps in a busy week, 3 hours a week on Facebook. I try to post content using the scheduler, and I'll sit down for a morning and make sure that everything that needs to be posted over the next several days and perhaps even the next 6 weeks. I'll try to complete that work in a 2 to 3 hour time slot. This includes building a post. It may include creating a banner for the top of the Facebook page. But overall, I'm going to say I generally commit about 2 to 3 hours a week for the ABCOPAD Facebook site. I should say that I also look at a couple of other sites that don't require quite that much attention, but I look at the other ABCOPAD Facebook sites as well. I'm not sure that a church website administrator, or excuse me, Facebook administrator would require that much time, but I think once you get the routine and the skill set down, it shouldn't take a tremendous amount of time. I'm looking at another comment there, Mark, about can you save video from a Facebook live stream to upload to your YouTube? Mark, I know that you have shown me how to save a Facebook video using GrabClip, or is it Clip Grab?
Grab.
And then
Mhm.
transferring it over to YouTube. I don't know if that's sufficient, or if Erica wants to know about saving a live stream in real time.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. That would, what Bud described is what we often do is once the video is complete, we will you can actually look up in the settings the URL for that video, for that live stream. And once you have that URL, you can put it into a program we use called Clip Grab, which will download that live stream to your computer. And once you've downloaded it from Facebook, then you can upload it to your YouTube channel to have that video there. So that's usually the way that we do that. And you're right, but nifty little program called Clip Grab. It works on both PC and Mac. You can download the version that you need for whatever platform you're using, and download those videos and then upload them to your YouTube channel. Brenda asks, do you include songs in your live stream on FB? And if so, do you have copyright permission? So that's not something we've had to do a lot with regarding those songs and copyright. We do have that CCA license, but maybe others. I know that can be tricky if you've got copyright music in your worship service. Facebook has become far more strict with that. I don't have good answers. Anyone else want to speak to that? I haven't had to do a lot.
Hey, Mark.
Yeah.
What I discovered in a Zoom meeting that was held down here is CCLI has 2 levels. They have a streaming, they have their basic license that I think we're all familiar with, and they also have a streaming license available as well. And the one church that does a lot of copyright, music down here, one of the big churches, also went with the ABSCAM license as well, the one that covers pretty much every published piece of music that's out there.
Yeah, I do know that
so
the streaming license that CCA provides is one way to do that, but I also know that there are still issues that you get flagged. So there's not an easy way to do that.
Yeah.
Other questions? Creating a YouTube channel, by the way, is pretty simple. Maybe we'll work on a future webinar for that. But once you have a Gmail account, of course, YouTube is owned by Google. So once you have your Gmail account, you can create your YouTube channel. And there are some really easy YouTube videos that will walk you through that process. So it used to be that you could do all kinds of additional, you could create logos and a whole bunch of stuff, but YouTube now requires a higher threshold of viewers before you have certain privileges unlocked. But you can still create the YouTube channel. You just don't get a personalized URL and some other features unless you have a certain level of viewership. What other questions do you have? Bud, what else do you have for us this?
Yeah, I have about a 2-minute closing, but I want to give Pastor Jeff a chance to speak about something. Oh, let me see if I have this. Well, let me do my 2 minutes and then Jeff can talk to us. I want to have this final word of encouragement and advice to you, and that is concerning your Facebook page. You want to get everyone on board before you work to engage a new audience. Make sure that your primary audience is connected to your Facebook page. So here's a suggestion. During your regular staff meeting, or perhaps even at the beginning of a worship service or special event, ask everyone in attendance to take out their smartphone, connect to your Facebook page, and hit the like button. In addition, you might want to encourage staff members to like and comment on your church Facebook posts and share them with other people at least once a week, because the more likes, the more comments, the more shares that you can generate, the more prominent your posts will become, and the longer they will remain present and lively in the news feeds. So encourage your people to hit the like button and to share the posts when appropriate. So that's really all that I have for the evening, but let's hear a word from Pastor Jeff.
Thank you, Brother Bud. Can you all hear me all right?
We can.
Good. I just want to share with you some thoughts from this book that through my national work became required reading because one of the authors, Michael Beck, a United Methodist pastor and director of Fresh Expressions National, will be doing a discipleship summit for our denomination late this year. And as I was reading this, I really became impressed with much of the content. So there were just a few things I thought I would lift up for you this evening and encourage all of you to consider on the backside of Bud's excellent presentation on Facebook posting and Facebook presence, to consider reading this Fresh Expressions in a Digital Age, because someone said tonight that in reality, the digital aspect of our church that we scrambled to create in light of COVID last year is not going away. And so each chapter concludes with internet technology named terms like Appit, chat box, where there's discussion questions that you can work through yourself or work through with people in your congregation. And there are behaviors. In other words, electronic and internet behaviors, practices as missionaries in the digital age. And then finally, there are live streams leading pastors sharing their experience and wisdom of being online. So I would really encourage you to consider, because the chapters that are 2/3 of the book, if you're a person that loves academics, stats and research and reporting out, then you'll like the first part of the book because it deals with that kind of information and also deals with the psychology of online presence. But if you can work your way through that and wade your way through that, then you'll really appreciate the practical aspects that play out in this book concerning the post-pandemic church. And by the way, this is just a new release, only a couple months old. So it is new information out there that really does speak to this moment in time in which we find ourselves living. It has a chapter devoted to online worship, lectionary, and utilizing resources. There's a chapter on rethinking evangelism and discipleship with an online presence. There also is a chapter on cultivating internet online ministries to complement, if you will, the on-site. And he uses the two differentiating terms, analog for on-site and digital for online, and says that our churches moving forward need to have both of them, if you will, a hybrid type of ecology where both of these realities are coming into play, a blended ecology of on-site, online, digital, and analog. And he talks about the three listenings that every church should be attuned to. That's listening to God, listening to the physical space, and listening to the digital space, because that is our new reality. And striking a balance, he says, between both of those worlds that we are now called to reach. I really appreciate the fact that there are an abundance of real life, real time examples playing out. And before I just finish my thoughts, I want to read a section of the book, just two quick paragraphs from pages 99 and 100. It says, Mid-City Church. See if you can relate to this, my friends. A Mid-City Church, like every congregation, scrambled to adjust. Mid-City Church offered worship online, gathered in small groups over Zoom, and assembled small teams that cared and served for the Mid-City congregation and community they loved so much. However, everyone was asking, and this is an important caveat, Mid-City Church was in March of last year to be a United Methodist new church plant and start. But everyone was asking the question, when will Mid-City Church launch? I mean, a church isn't really a church until it's had a massive launch with more than a couple hundred people and a bunch of buzz, right? This question began to weigh heavily on the leadership, not the least of whom was Pastor Fernie and the congregation of Mid-City Church. Then one day, during a conversational call, the leadership was having a tough time about Mid-City Church. And if you've ever planted a church or been involved with a church, you know what those calls are like. As they started going through the numbers, they began to see something. Mid-City Church had more than 60 people in small groups, not affinity groups or supper clubs, but discipling groups. These groups were super diverse and super young, one of them being all Hispanic musicians. And most of all, they had never been or had left the church, and all of them were giving and serving sacrificially. When they began to look at the numbers, they realized Mid-City Church had already launched, and that it had launched big. They had launched a digital church that was growing, alive, and reaching new people in new places. Suffice to say, without ever gathering physically since the start of COVID, Mid-City Church has shown everyone that when it comes to ministry, everything is virtually possible. And I want to encourage you with that regardless the size of your church, and I think I'm safe in saying this for Mark, Frank, Bud, and I, that we have not yet found a church in ABCOPAD that has gone online during COVID, that hasn't had more people online, regardless of the size of the church, small or larger, more people online during the week of that service than they had on site, regardless of size of your church. So wherever you're located, whatever your size may be, you can have a huge impact and make a really big difference. Before I turn it back over to Mark and Bud to finish out, we want to give away a few copies of this book to share with you, to thank you for the privilege of your time tonight. You could be anywhere doing anything this last hour and a half, but you've chosen to join us. Literally, I've noticed names from across the country, from the East Coast going west. And so we want to thank you for the privilege of your time participating in this excellent webinar tonight. But Frank, can you unmute yourself and give me a number between 1 and 27, please?
21.
21. Mark, can you unmute yourself and give me a number between 1 and 27, but not, well, really not 1 or 2 or 3, because that's me, you, and Bud, but between 4 and 27, not counting 21. Can you give me a number?
11.
11. And Bud, can you give me a number?
7.
7. And so the people that I'll be working with, Denise, our admin for our region tomorrow, are the following people who will be receiving a book. There's Ada, there's Brenda Saver, and there is Linda Chipoleski. You three will each be receiving a free copy of the book. We'll get it out to you sometime this week, but I would encourage the rest of you to consider a read. It will complement the content that Bud and Mark have shared with us this evening. Thanks, guys, for providing me a few minutes to share.
Thank you, Jeff. Just a real quick story. I was with a congregation on Sunday. There were a couple of older ladies who mentioned that they've been appreciative of their pastoral leadership team, who's been doing online worship via Facebook, and said, you know, we really haven't been growing numerically, but I'm glad our younger pastoral leaders had an online presence. And I had just finished up the book and looking at the difference, the fact that this church has a blended ecology, right? Analog and digital. And while there may not have been very many new people in the sanctuary, and there were a few, while there may not have been very many, I know they have been reaching lots of people via their Facebook page. And I had to say to the ladies, I don't think your statement is true. I think you have grown dramatically, maybe more than you have ever grown. You have grown in the last 18 months, more than you have in the last decade, because your digital presence is huge compared to your analog presence. And as they thought about that, they thought, we really have not thought about the fact that our church has grown in this digital world, and the fact that there's been significant growth there. So the book is super helpful in beginning to rethink how we look at ministry, unlike we have ever looked at ministry before, with this blended ecology, right? The ecology of analog and digital are really important. Bud, closing words before I didn't open in person. We're going to close in prayer in just a minute, but thoughts?
I'm without words. I thank everybody for being a part of the evening. I hope that it was worth your time, and I'll be checking out your Facebook pages over the next couple of weeks. See what's happening in your neck of the woods.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Jeff, for talking a little bit about the book. Pastor Frank, maybe you can close us out in prayer. That would be awesome.
Sure, I'll be happy to, Mark.
Hey,
Let's
guys,
put-
I just want to say it was great to be with you on my birthday today. Good to see all your smiling faces from down here in Tennessee. Frank, I want you to know I'm going to miss your leadership.
Thanks, brother. Thank you. Let's pray together, friends. Gracious God, we come to you this night, so grateful that you are a God that meets us face to face, and that, Lord, you long to be in intimate relationship with us. And God, that's how we're wired as people. And so, Lord, we pray that this use of technology and this digital age would be one in which we can mirror and model the wonder of your love for us with the people that we engage with through Facebook and other social platforms. God, for all that's been shared this night, we say thank you, Lord, and we pray for each person that's a part of this evening, that God, you would take what they have learned and help them to engage with it in a way that honors you and extends your kingdom and encourages your people. Bless us now as we part, oh God, for we ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.
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 Thank you, friends. Have a great night.
Thank
God
you,
bless
everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.
Good night, everyone.